Welcome back to the Yardie MMA podcast where we talk more in a face and defend ourselves. I'm your host, Silverback Segree. And today's podcast episode, we will be going into UFC 276, obviously. Couldn't do nothing else. UFC 276 is this Saturday, July the 2nd. It is a very great card, a very stacked card. And in front of me, for those who are watching on YouTube, at Yardie MMA on YouTube, I have the fight card pulled up. And I'm just going to go through the fights that really interest me, the fight them when we really want to talk about. And let's just get straight into it. Alright, so the first fight I'm really interested in is obviously Uriah Hall versus Andre Munhoz. Because Uriah, Jamaican, you can see the Jamaican flag right there. Going to the tail of the tape, Uriah 6 foot tall, Andre Munhoz 6'1". Just a 1.5 inch reach advantage for Uriah, 79.5 and 78 inches for Andre Munhoz. But this is just basically the classic battle of the striker versus the grappler. Andre Munhoz last two fight them in submit Jacare Souza, and it was this other guy that he submitted. I think I can pull that up now. Yeah, Eric Anders. So he submitted Jacare Souza and Eric Anders with the same submission. He basically take them back and then transition into an armbar. Earlier this week I put out a video talking about Uriah Hall and the possibility of him needing a sports psychologist, because this guy just, sadly, his head isn't in the game of MMA like that. He doesn't have that killer instinct, and that's what I think causes him to come up short against many of the big fighters. Whenever there's a big fight on the line, he normally loses it, and that's sad to say for a fellow Jamaican, but that's the reality. You have to face the reality. The guy, him head in the dead most times when it comes to the fights. I even heard at one point him saying that he doesn't really like to hurt people. I know you gotta do this MMA thing, I don't know if I don't like hurt people, but maybe Uriah Hall, honestly, what I think is maybe Uriah Hall career coming to an end. This is one of those fights where the UFC will feed it to the sharks, basically. So UFC is here upon a decline, and them know say things not go too good for you, so them want to feed it to a younger up and comer who them basically pray say I go beat you and just get you out of there. And potentially, you never know, Uriah Hall might retire from the sport of MMA because things not really go that great. Him they have some victories. I think him they have a 4-fight win streak before the Sean Strickland fight. But then after that 4-fight win streak, him get a bump up, him get a more important fight, I would say a critical fight to push him forward. And him just crumble under the pressure. I don't know what exactly the problem is with Uriah, but since the start of his career, everybody see this. Everybody see him as this talent that he's so good, his technique is great, but him can't put it together and him can't develop that killer instinct to finish fights and just be there to beat the big opponents. Prediction for this fight, based on what I'm seeing here, the odds are in the favor of Andre Munhoz. Rightly so. Younger fighter and a grappler. So it could very well go to Munhoz. I'm just hoping and praying really that Uriah can pull out something out of the bag and show us and beat this young guy. The next fight that interests me that I'm going into is the first fight of the night on the main card. Pedro Munhoz versus Sean O'Malley. I think that's the order of it. I hope that's still the order of it, because this fight card has had a lot of shuffling and cancellation over like the last 2 weeks. We were supposed to have Lauren Murphy fighting, and that fight is cancelled, and just a lot of shuffling going on with this card. But the next fight we are going to is Pedro Munhoz and Sean O'Malley. I did some research for this card. I just watched some of the past fights of these guys, and I'm just going to go into the observations that I have based on watching the past fight for these guys. First, going to the tail of the tape, Pedro 5'6", Sean 5'11", so Sean has that height advantage. Sean also has the reach advantage, 72-inch reach, while Pedro just have a 65. Pedro mainly standing orthodox, and Sean, switch stances and do be fancy things and play basketball in the middle of the octagon when he's ready. Pedro, I realized that he doesn't have as much variety as Sean in terms of his strikes. Especially in his last fight against Aldo that I watched, realize him focus on his landing that big right hand. Pedro, to me, him look more like a brawler rather than a technical fighter. He more you stand up and in that firefight, and I think that's how him did end up and knock out Cody Garbrandt, because then they end up in a brawl and him just happen to land the big punch first. So I really think that Sean can pick him apart in this fight. Once Sean watch out for this right hand, I think Sean can pick him apart, especially with just the technique that Sean have. Although most people don't really like Sean, and because Sean just chat too much, Sean chat a bag of shit. But you have to chat shit in UFC nowadays to get a name out there. But Sean can really pick him apart because Pedro, he's a brawler really, and brawlers, them tend to have great defense. So like, for example, Nick Diaz, them stand up and just take the punches, and I saw a lot of that in Pedro's fight against Jose Aldo, where you never see him defend himself that much. Him try shell up sometimes, but there are 4-ounce gloves. There's only so much you can do with shelling up with a 4-ounce glove, and it's not like him have a guard as tight as Piotr Jan, where when him shell up, barely get any punches. When Pedro shell up, you can still land on him. And I think that is the main, throughout this whole fight card, I think that's going to be the main difference maker in a lot of the fights, where some of the guys them have better defense than others. Even in an interview this week with Alex, he's the person that really bring my mind to this, again, Alex Volkanovski, where he's saying that, and I'll get into his fight later obviously, but what he's saying is that a lot of the guys that he's fighting, especially Max, they don't have great defense, and in order to be a great fighter, you have to have very good defense. In order to have longevity in your career, you have to have good defense, and I think that will be the main difference in this fight with Pedro and Sean. Pedro also like to try a bag of spinning shit. Him just tired out himself. Him try a bag of, I don't know if I'm gonna do that against Sean. Hopefully him not do it, because him try against Jose Aldo and it never work. Him do a lot of spinning kicks and him tired out himself. I think that Sean is very good at using him reach, very good at using him height against the fighters, his opponents, and Pedro have a hard time getting in, and when Pedro does rush and get in and try to get in eventually, I think Sean is going to clip him. Sean is deceptively strong and very accurate. You see some of the punches, some people will say that Sean hasn't had any real test, but just based on watching his fights, you can see that him very accurate with him punches. Him have knockout power. He's one of them skinny guy there where you can't underestimate. Him have knockout power. Him can knock out Pedro. Even though Pedro has a good chin, and Pedro would be difficult to knock out, but if anybody can do it, I think Sean can do it with his accuracy and the deceptive power that he has, that I don't think a lot of people give him credit for. So my pick for that Pedro Munhoz versus Sean O'Malley fight, I think Sean is going to win. Sean is the favorite. And I just think that Sean has too much variety and too much accuracy for Pedro, the brawler. The next fight that I'm going into, that I am interested in, because I'm just going to go off of what me interested in. Now you have other fights on the card, obviously. Robbie Lawler and Brian Barberina. That's the next fight after Pedro and Sean. But I am going into the Strickland and the Alex Pereira fight. Now, the UFC really I try to push this rematch, this third fight with Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya. Them really are push him. The UFC for me nowadays kind of come like the WWE. Is more of a storyline based organization, I would say, right now, because everybody want to make money. Obviously the whole goal of the company is to make money and make profit, and the story drives the ticket sales. And what a story it will be when Alex Pereira, or if Alex Pereira beats Sean Strickland and then gets the next title shot to challenge Israel Adesanya for the middleweight championship. Tail of the tape for these guys: Sean Strickland 6'1", Alex Pereira a whopping 6'4". The man tall, the man big, and just built like a brick shit house. Not telling a lie. When I see them man, they is supposed to afraid. And even Sean Strickland kinda they say today in the press conference, in the fighter interviews, where they say, oh, Alex just intimidating, him built big and scary. 76-inch reach for Sean and 79-inch reach for Alex Pereira. That reach advantage is very important for Alex Pereira. A lot of the times when I see him fighting, especially in his 2 UFC fights that he has, him is able to use that reach advantage to keep guys out. His whole defense is just, he puts out his hand and then just step back and evade, and then the guys them can't get in a range. So Sean, I forgot to really try getting the range. I think Sean might resort to wrestling. There's a very good possibility that Sean resorts to wrestling. And even he said it today also in the fighter interviews. I don't think Alex Pereira has been tested to that extent in the wrestling. I would say Israel Adesanya had, in his early days in the UFC, had more of a test in the wrestling department than Alex Pereira. He's only had one guy, that guy from Greece that he fought, and that guy wasn't really that good, even though he was a black belt in BJJ. But he never hold him down at all. He never really had no problem with him. Plus, Alex trained with Glover Teixeira. Glover Teixeira very good at wrestling, and him big. So he definitely bigger than Strickland, because Glover fights in the 205 division. But I think that Sean does have some tricks that he does with his wrestling. It's not just straight wrestling. Like when Sean get it down, Sean will do these dirty things like cover your mouth and cover your nose to stop your breathing. And then Sean also, with his wrestling, I think he incorporates ground and pound better than the other guys, than the Greek guy that Alex faced before. So Sean can do more damage in that respect. One thing to look out for though is that Sean was very disappointed with his last fight, his last performance. Sean said that he wanted to push the pace more. He felt that he didn't give his fans the type of show that they expect from him. So it might be that Sean just try to strike with him. I think more than likely Sean will try strike with him first, and then if him say it now work out, him switch over to the wrestling maybe, or just to tire him out. One important thing though in this fight to look out for is Alex Pereira with the left hook. One of Alex Pereira's best shots is the left hook. That's what he knocked out Izzy with, and that's what he drops a lot of guys with and knock out a lot of guys with. If you watch Sean Strickland, you realize that him keep him hand them low, especially him right hand. It don't the right time chin to protect him chin, like say for example Piotr Yan. So you have to look out for that left hook that Alex Pereira could potentially land on Sean, because him right hand are kind of always low when him a fight. But at the same time, it deceptive, because even though Sean right hand is low, him have good distance management. He gets in and out of range, of the striking range well. Him just get a little bit out of the range of the punches that is coming to him, and then easily go back. Him not go too far back, so where him can't come in back quick and then just start strike with the other guy. So that is Sean's defensive style. Him just slip out of range and get back in with you and then start fight again. So that could mitigate the left hook. That could defend well against the left hook. But that is something to look out for. Alex Pereira could knock out Sean with his left hook because Sean keep him right and low a lot of the times. My prediction for this fight, boy, the fight are kind of hard, I'm not gonna lie. But I'm gonna go with Sean. I think Sean have the experience to beat Pereira. I think Sean can mix up things more and give Pereira more of a fight, more of a challenge on the ground. I think Sean has the determination and the confidence to stand with Pereira. Most guys would afraid of him because he's a former Glory kickboxing champion, 2-division Glory kickboxing champion. So most of the guys and them are already afraid of him just from that. I think Sean are afraid of him. I think Sean are gonna get him down. Probably try to do some dirty boxing with him maybe. Or when him get him down on the ground, him a go use him little dirty tricks where he can use. Him not gonna just wrestle you like it's a wrestling match. Him a gonna wrestle you in a dirtier way to get you tired. And I think that gonna be something that Pereira finds difficult to deal with. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Sean Strickland for this fight. But if Pereira win, you know will come the money fight, which everybody kinda wants to see. Next we're going into the co-main event, Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway. This is a trilogy that everybody been await for. So you know say we asked for it, and I think it was deserved for Max to get the trilogy, because even in the last fight, Dana did say that he thought that Max won the fight, and a lot of other fighters think that Max won the fight. I'm a Max fan, so I thought that Max won that second fight as well. But some for consider. But before I'm going into that though, let me go into the tail of the tape. 5'6" for Alexander Volkanovski and 5'11" for Max. So Max taller, but deceptively Volk has a 71.5-inch reach and Max just have 69-inch reach. So but I find that in the last two fights the reach wasn't really an issue. So the difference in reach wasn't really an issue based on what I saw. So not to worry about that difference in reach. But what I was saying just now is that Dana thought that Max won that fight. A lot of people thought that Max won that fight. I thought that Max won that fight. The second fight, that is. But you have to consider that leg kicks are easier to score than punches. Max is a boxer. Max's main base martial art, I would say, is boxing. While Volkanovski is more well-rounded and he focused a lot on the leg kicks. You can imagine that it's easier for a judge see the leg kicks of Volkanovski rather than to score the punches of Max, because how do you really score a punch? Some of them might miss, and then some of the judges see it. Maybe two of the judges see the punch land while one of the judges don't see the punch as landing or causing significant damage or being registered as a significant strike, while others might see it that way. But on the other side of the spectrum, it is very easy to see a leg kick and just say, alright, check and get a leg kick. And that has been Volkanovski's main way of attacking Max, the leg kicks. Max did do better in the second fight with the leg kicks, but I wouldn't say he was doing better in terms of checking them and defending them. I think he was doing better in terms of attacking back. So he didn't just allow Volkanovski to kick his legs like he did in the first fight. And then he got his own share of the leg kicks, a decent amount of leg kicks, but just not as much as Volkanovski did. So I guess that helped Volkanovski to win that second fight. Something to look out for in this third fight is that from the second fight, Max adjusted, and that kind of did catch Volkanovski off guard. Max adjusted and Max pick up on some patterns of him that he never really expect Max to pick up on. And one of those patterns that I saw that Max picked up on in the second fight was that sometimes Volkanovski enters into range with his head down. And if you watch back that second fight, you'll see that Max tried some flying knees and the uppercut left hook. So the right uppercut left hook when Volkanovski entered into range. I think even one of the times he did drop Volkanovski with a combo in the second fight. So you have to look out for that. Volkanovski have a tendency to drop him head down when him coming to range, and if coming to striking distance, in striking range. And if Max is able to time, especially maybe that flying knee or the uppercut, if Max is able to time them well, he will probably knock down Volk again. In the last fight, he get 2 knockdown. I scored them as knockdown, but obviously the UFC judges never score them as knockdown. I find that lately the criteria for knockdowns and scoring a round as a 10-8 round, it kind of get weird, because in my opinion, Max did get 2 knockdown in that last fight, although Volkanovski did get some takedowns. And that's another thing to note, that Max is very good at defending the double leg and the single leg, but whenever Volkanovski do a body lock and do the inside trip, him almost always get Max down. So if Volkanovski want to bring it to the ground, I think that's the best way to do it. Max is very good at standing up back after a double leg and a single leg. He's very good at defending them, or just not going down at all. But when Mr. Volkanovski do the body lock with the inside trip, him tend to drop more, secure the takedown more. But this fight, it's going in favor in terms of the odds, going in favor of the champion Volkanovski. And as much as I am a fan of Max, I think that it will go to Volkanovski again. And then you hear Volkanovski talking about going up to fight the champion of the lightweight division. That would be interesting to see, because Volkanovski is a big guy. He come down from like 200 and odd pounds from his rugby career, so he carry a lot of power from being a heavy set guy. So it would be interesting to see if Volk can go up to the lightweight division and become a double champ. I think that would be the most entertaining and the most lucrative move for Volkanovski after he defends his title against Max for the second time. Now we go into the main event of the evening, the great Israel Adesanya versus Jared Cannonier. Now let me just say beforehand that I am very, very, very biased to Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya is the man who made me really fall in love with combat sports, kickboxing, and mixed martial arts. Israel Adesanya is my favorite fighter of all time, 100%, no doubt, favorite fighter. So I'm very biased. I don't know who me think I will win. I don't know who a lot of people think I will win. He is a very, very heavy favorite for this fight against Jared Cannonier. And recently, in this week, watch a video from Chael Sonnen talking about the fact that Israel Adesanya is so much of a favorite in this fight. But I'm going to break it down now, and I think it is very well deserved that Israel is a favorite against Jared Cannonier. The tail of the tape for this fight, Israel Adesanya is 6'4", while Jared Cannonier is 5'11", and Israel has the longer reach, obviously, with 80-inch reach, and Jared has a 77.5-inch reach, and they are both stance switchers. That is a very important point to note that Jared can switch stance. And the reason why that is important to note is because Israel's main attack to establish in the first part of a fight is the leg kick. The outside leg kick, the inside leg kick. And a lot of the guys them who don't stand switch, them find it hard to deal with the leg kicks because them lead leg just always there for Israel's snap it. Just pepper it with kicks over and over and over again. You see how him did dismantle Costa with it. Him did do it to Robert Whittaker as well. In the second fight, him did do it a lot, and then eventually him start coming with the hands, and that's what Israel does. He start off with the leg kicks and goes into and then develop further along in the fight with him hands after him establish the leg kick. But the fact that Jared Cannonier stance switches, I think he will have to do a lot of stance switching in this fight to prevent Israel from just dismantling him leg. Although I did recognize that Jared isn't the best at checking leg kicks. He's very good at giving leg kicks. He does that a lot. I mean, he has a TKO against the great Anderson Silva from giving him a leg kick. He's good at giving leg kicks. I know that is one of his main weapons is the leg kick when he's fighting. But I don't think that he's very good at checking them. And based on what I've seen in the previous fights, and I think that Israel is very good at checking the leg kicks. He's good at, even in the Marvin Vettori fight, you can see that Israel was very good at checking the leg kicks a lot of the time. So I think that little difference between both of them, as I said earlier, it's mainly about defense and who has the better defense. A lot of the fights is going to come down to who has the better defense on this card. And just to go back to the Volkanovski and the Max fight, is the same thing there. Max doesn't have the greatest defense. Max just like get punched in the face. Him accept it and just go through the war. And I think Volk is developing more power. That is kind of scary to say, but coming off that win against the Korean Zombie, where him just there knock him over and over and over again until he eventually have to stop the fight. I think that's a very possible thing that could happen to Max, and even Volk was saying it, has been saying it throughout the week, is that your chin can only last that long. Your chin can only last so long, and I think it's a very good possibility that if I was betting on this fight, I would bet for Volk TKO or Volk decision win. But you have to think about that possibility though. But going back now to the Israel and the Jared fight, that's one of the main differences between both of them, is that Israel has better defense than Jared in a lot of ways. Firstly, with the leg kicks, Israel can defend the leg kick them better than Jared. Secondly, now with the striking, in terms with the punches, Israel can evade and use him long reach, I should say, and get out of the striking range. He does this something similar to John Jones, where he just uses his reach, uses his hands, and just put it in your face and try keep it out of striking zone, out of the red zone there, where you can punch him. So him do that a lot, and I think Jared not gonna be able to defend that or get in as well as he would like to. Some of the times in the last fight that Jared had with Kelvin Gastelum, that was his last fight, but that was a fight that he had recently against Kelvin Gastelum. I realized that Jared have kind of a lapse in concentration sometimes, and you can see it. I see it sometimes on some of the guys that I spar with on Saturdays, that you strike them, you punch them, and then it's like them brain just go somewhere else. It's like them what I would say, they would be criticizing themselves mid-fight. I think Jared does that. I have a suspicion that Jared does that, criticize himself mid-fight. And people said, and it can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing, because people say that Jared is very good at adapting and switching him style of fighting, him approach to the fight in mid-fight, because remember in the Brunson fight, he did almost get choked out in that first round. They almost get choked out, and then he come back in the second round and demolish Brunson. Thankfully, because I never want to see Brunson fight. I don't like Brunson. That's a story for next time. But I like Derek Brunson. But based on watching the Gastelum fight, Jared Cannonier and Gastelum, I see that sometimes in kind of lapse in concentration in him defense. Sometimes him enter into range recklessly, and sometimes him when he's being advanced, when the opponent advances into him not defend himself that well. And I think that little detail is going to leave an opening for Israel to land one of those strikes, one of those punches right on his chin, those accurate punches right on his chin. Israel is very similar to Sean O'Malley in the sense that he is very accurate and deceptively strong. And I think that's just a very good quality to have as a skinny guy. Technique beats power. A lot of people tell you that over and over, that technique beats power. And Israel have the technique and Israel have the accuracy to land directly upon Jared Cannonier's chin and knock him out. Israel is the favorite for this fight, and I think it's rightly deserved. I think Jared just doesn't have that level of defense that is needed to beat Israel Adesanya. I would see that Sean Strickland and Alex Pereira, those two guys have better defense to fight Israel, and it would be a more interesting fight if one of those two guys was fighting Israel, because I think that fact that they can defend themselves better. Maybe me chat foolishness. Maybe Jared have a plan. We don't really see Jared as a wrestler, so we know that it's going to be basically a kickboxing match. He's gonna try out kickbox, one of the best kickboxers in the world. We have to have confidence going into this fight game, into a title fight especially. You have to have confidence in yourself. Jared seems to have that confidence. I don't think he would be like a Vittori or like a Whittaker in the last fight. I think that Jared will push the pace, will try to attack Adesanya as much as possible safely, but I think that Israel will still be too much for him. I don't think that he is at that level to beat Israel. But UFC 276 is going to be a great card. It's going to be a very interesting card from top to bottom. I talk from early prelims to prelims and to the main card. It just be a good fight, you gotta see. Some of them never go through. We have some interesting fights that are going to be happening. Notably, Jim Miller and Donald Cerrone, Brad Riddell and Jalen Turner. Those are some interesting fights. And obviously the Robbie Lawler and Brian Barberina. I think that is a very good fight. Both of them are going to be brawling and punching each other in the face. I expect a lot of blood for that fight. And this is my breakdown and predictions for the UFC 276 coming up on July 2nd. This has been Yardie MMA with Silverback Segree. Follow me on Instagram at Silverback Segree. You can also follow the YouTube channel for Yardie MMA. We're going to be coming out with some more content for that YouTube channel down the line, so just subscribe from now. And this is where we thump boy in the face and defend ourselves. I'm out.